Yeah, let me give a brief introduction about CareerCon and about you, and then probably you can get started.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. So, welcome everyone to CareerCon 2020. It is India's kind of first career webinar. This conference is the result of years of pondering and quest to fill the widening gaps between the perception and reality in the rapidly evolving career sphere, especially in India. Many organizations and companies have surfaced recently who take advantage of parents' dedication and commitment to provide quality education to their kids. They exploit the prevalent ignorance and lack of quality guidance because of modern lifestyle, which has made us busier than ever. CareerCon is our earnest endeavor to expose the darkening attitude towards education to light.
वीडियो को बंद करता हूँ.
Excuse me, can you please mute yourself? Yeah, thank you. So, CareerCon is our earnest endeavor to expose the darkening attitude towards education to light. The light will come from experience and guidance of world-class educationalists and professionals like Dr. Adria Baker and Dr. Manik Talwani. CareerCon is a platform through which we aim to connect you to such people who have impacted and improved education and research in the world and who can show you what it takes to be successful in the modern world. Our speakers for today are Dr. Adria Baker, who is the Associate Vice Provost of International Education at Rice University, and she's also the Director of at Office of International Students and Scholars. And Dr. Manik Talwani is a Professor Emeritus from the Earth Science Department at Rice University. So I will give a detailed introduction about Dr. Manik Talwani later. He will speak after Dr. Adria Baker. So our first speaker will be Dr. Adria Baker, and let me introduce her to you in 2 minutes. I hope it doesn't take much time. So Dr. Adria Baker is the Associate Vice Provost for International Education, and she is also the Executive Director of the Office of International Students and Scholars at Rice University, where she has worked for 20 plus years. She also serves as the Director of Brazil at Rice office, winning the 2015 Senator Paul Simon Campus Internationalization and the 2020 IIE High Skill Award for Rice Brazilian initiatives. Adria has enjoyed serving in leadership roles in international education, and her topics of publication and presentation include international education advocacy, public policy, immigration advising, integration, and other global themes. Adria was awarded a Fulbright in 2013 to South Korea and serves as a US Fulbright Scholar Alumni Ambassador. She is board member emeritus of Houston Fulbright Association chapter and on the advisory board for the Houston Guayaquil Sister City Association. She studied as a Rotary Fellow at the University of Costa Rica. So Adria, I give the control to you now. And thank you again for joining us here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra, for this amazing invitation. I'm so happy to be here. I don't think there's anything I love more than speaking to students, but to be able to speak to students from India, that's just such an honor. I have such great admiration for each and every one of your countries. I mean, your country and where you're from. I know it's so diverse across the country, and we've met people from all over India through the years, and amazing, excellent students, just like Dr. Mishra, and we're so grateful. And I'm grateful to work with also Dr. Talwani too. It's so great to see him again. Thank you all so much for attending. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen because I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. And I got to say, I was so honored to be asked to speak at this because you guys are at a point where you can make so many decisions right now. And I hope that something I say might be able to help you as you think about the different options in your life that you might want to do. Can you see my screen okay? Can you see the presentation well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. I also, during the time, I think I'll kind of go through the slides. There's not that many, and just talk more about perseverance and how that is such a key component. So for your success, and I've seen it over and over through the many years that I've worked with international students from all over the world, I've seen that what is that one thing that helps students succeed? And they're going through so many differences, I mean, they're coming from abroad, they're studying in a different educational system, they're studying in a different language. They don't have their normal support system with them. They build a new support system and keep in contact and have their family always with them. But for the time being, when they're studying, sometimes they're far away. And what is it that helps them? And I will tell you that what keeps people going is perseverance, making sure that even because life is not always easy. And so when you persevere and you keep persevering, it's very helpful. I would say that if we can, maybe at the end, Dr. Mishra, if you can ask me some of the questions, then I can answer some maybe at the end, because we'll have plenty of time for questions. I'm open to any questions. I always tell my students from all over the world, international students, I say this is a no shy zone, because many students come from, they're self-conscious about their language skills, or they may be coming from a culture that you just wouldn't speak up. But I tell people this in a no shy zone, because I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions. So thank you so much for inviting me to the CareerCon India 2020. This is really exciting, and I'm grateful to be here. So perseverance, we're going to talk about what it is as we go through that. But I'd like to tell you, if you don't mind, a little bit about my background first. So this is a picture of the state of Texas. It's one of the 50 states in the United States. It's the second largest state. Sometimes we forget that it's not its own country. I always laugh. It's not true. But I think because we're so big and it takes so long to go across, if you're just driving in a car from east to west or north to south, it's going to take about 13 hours going east to west or north to south. And so it's pretty big. But I know you all come from a very big country with some very, very big states too. So I know you can relate. But many of the states in the United States are not quite this big. So you could fit several other states into just Texas. I'm from the north, where you see the arrow. It's called the Panhandle, and it's a very Texas, very kind of rural town up, and so it's not from a fancy place. A lot of people, you think, oh well, you have to be from some fancy city or a big city to be able to enjoy your dreams. That's not true. That didn't happen to me. I worked really, really hard. I wasn't one of the smartest people at all, but it was perseverance, I think, that helped me. I came from a mid-class family. My parents were educators. My mom was a teacher counselor. My dad was a principal. My sister still, was a teacher. And so education was always very important to us. It wasn't being educators, sometimes it didn't make a lot of money for us, but it also helped us know that we were investing in the future of others. And it just gave us it's just a very enriching field to work with students. I had a scholarship to study in the University of Costa Rica, and for me to work with international students, I knew I needed to study in another country. And from small city Amarillo going down to Central America, um, below Mexico, I thought that was a pretty far place to go. And now looking at it I'm from Houston, you see down in the south there where it says Rice University, we can take direct flights in 3.5 hours. But at the time we couldn't. And so it was a big change for me. I was so grateful for that scholarship. It changed my life, and it helped me understand, um, perspectives from other people's perspective. I also worked in Mexico for 2 years, and then I've been so grateful to work at Rice for over 20 years. And I will tell you, I've only worked with international students. Yes, we meet U.S. students, but just meeting people from around the world is just a joy and a blessing to be able to learn from each one of these students and to help them integrate and help them understand who we are and to make the most of their education. But why do I care so much about perseverance? Just personally, I interact with people who are constantly needing to overcome barriers every day. And you are too, I'm sure, in your own way. Everybody has their own challenges. His son, he's a wonderful son. He has special needs, learning disabilities, but he brings so many other things to our life. So maybe he's not he isn't able to do some of the things that you all can do academically. He is able to in many ways. He's shown success in many different ways just by being creative and learning, and he just has to work harder than most people, but he does accomplish a lot. So we work, and perseverance is something he has to have every day, and we do too. And then international students, as I mentioned, they come from a different educational background. So the way you study in India and when they come to the United States may be a little bit different. And so, that's overcoming a barrier, and they're far from their families. Again, they create a social network in the new university, and they stay in touch. Fortunately, via Zoom, you can talk to anybody anytime and see them, FaceTime. But there's also can be cultural barriers or cultural challenges. Maybe because there's things that you were brought up all your life thinking certain things, and then you come to another country and you learn new things. But the beauty is that you get to choose the best of both worlds at that point. And then there's immigration laws. You've got to learn really quickly, what can I do? What can I not do? What are the benefits? And how can I maximize on this? And then everything's different. You're going to come, for example, if a student comes, the food's going to be different. The music they like to listen to might be different, the different kinds of sports, what you do, what your value of time is. And so we help students deal with that. And also, I've struggled with learning. There's certain compensations that I have to deal with, but I feel like the reason why I've been able to work at such an amazing university and have the opportunity to work with internationals for the time that I have is because I had passion, I had perseverance. And so I don't think I came with a lot of the same ability that a lot of really, really successful people do, but I had the perseverance. And I will tell you that I think it lasts longer. I've seen a lot of successful people that were really brilliant that end up not making it as long. Why? Because they don't have that aspect of persevering when things are not easy. And so that's what that's what's been helpful to me, and I hope that that's you will think about that. We're going to go now into kind of a self-reflection about your own. Um, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that in a minute. Above my desk, I have this quote, and the quote says, "Never give up, never ever give up." And it's a sign that above my desk, and the students see it when they come in all the time, and it says, "Never, never give up." And I love that quote because it does help students who are going through a lot of questions. They're trying to maybe pass, they are having questions on a class that they're not quite getting. Things can be tough. We have students who are doing a PhD, and that's a long, that's a marathon. And congratulations, Dr. J, he got his doctorate from Rice, and we're so proud of that. But it was not easy. I mean, you go through a lot of times that it's, things are, maybe if you're doing experiments, the experiments are not working, or, you just get writer's block or whatever. Or if you're an undergraduate student, there just may be some classes you just don't, understand as well. But I like this guy. His name was Jimmy Valvano. They called him Jimmy V. He was an inspirational basketball coach many years ago. It's an old picture. It's an old man. He's not alive anymore. I mean, I'm sorry. He wasn't old when he died. Unfortunately, he died young, for a man. But what he did was he gave a quote that was very important, and he told his team he was dying of cancer, I believe, and he was right before the team was making incredible gains in a time that they weren't, that it was against everything that they had that he could, that the team could make. And he just went into the team as he left, because he couldn't be coached later on, and he just said, never give up, never give up, never ever give up. And that quote just kind of kept going. Other people have said the same quote through the years, but that shows the perseverance. I think about Jimmy Valvano, Jimmy V, all the time. He was quite a character in terms of personality, very enthusiastic. He had very bright, and but he was able to pull his team above everyone, and they won. They won the championship, and they weren't. They were at the bottom. You can read more about that there. So now I'm going to just talk about maybe barriers that you face, a little bit of in kind of looking at it in yourself and seeing, do you have barriers? Everybody has certain barriers they have to face every day, or sometimes during the school. Maybe it's, group dynamics. It could be your family expects something of you that you just really, that's not, you're not able to meet those expectations, or you feel, school, there's things at school that don't necessarily match up with what your talents are. Or peer pressure being, maybe you're with groups of students and they things are very, very easy for them. They can do math very, very easy, but that's not your skill may be something that has to do with more art or humanities, or it has something to do with, maybe you're interested in science or putting together things, engineering. But it may be just the fact that you're a fantastic artist and everybody else is great scientists or engineering. That doesn't make, so there's, you can feel sometimes peer pressure, or sometimes just around negative people, which is unfortunate. We try very hard not to be around negative people, but it happens. It could be also just personal. I mean, sometimes we just get self-conscious. I know that, you're around people who are really brilliant sometimes, and your friends and families maybe, succeeding in certain ways that you're not. And so we become very kind of self-conscious, or kind of, it affects our self-image. You may have a disability, or your family member may have a disability. That's perfectly fine, and working through that is perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, it makes you stronger, and it also allows you to have that gift. My son with his special needs, we constantly love to meet people with other special needs or have difficulty, because we always say, wow, I wonder what that special gift is that they have, because everybody has a special gift and many people have many gifts. And so, we focus on what is the gift that each person has, and yourself. Maybe you have difficulty doing certain things. Some people may have academic pieces of academics. Some people in the United States, sports is really important, extracurricular activities, but maybe that's just not your gift, but you have other things. And so, or maybe you're just not as motivated as other people. But, so here we have Snoopy. This is a, cartoon that we call it Peanuts in the United States, about so much to do and no desire to do it. So that's just kind of, sometimes we feel that way, and that's perfectly fine, but we don't want it to happen too long. That's when we persevere on those barriers. Other barriers you may face, it could be the environment. Social norms may be the things that go against how maybe is what how you want to live your life. Being around people who may be negative, like I said, or maybe where you live or your financial situation. I mean, people, think about those as barriers, but maybe it could be something that's actually you can persevere through. Could it be maybe visualizing a future for yourself? Some people just like hope. They like the motivation of vision. Being able to pursue your interests, your worry or fear. Here we have Charlie Brown, who wakes up in the middle of the night. My anxieties have anxieties. So and the funny part about this character, of course, if you've ever seen Charlie Brown, he's always kind of nervous. But what are other barriers you face that you need to persevere through? And that's something I think it's really helpful to think in our own self. If we can think, what are those things that are tough for us, not always trying to go against the grain, but just really recognizing it and then going around it and then trying to not only recognize it, but persevere through and compensate and find other things too that you're good at. So I wanted to give you 7 people, and I'm sorry that they're all kind of Western. They're not from India, but I know you all have many people who have have through perseverance, they have overcome failure. And so these are, you may or may not know them, but I'll tell you a bit about them. But I'm going to put their picture up first. This is the first one. Who is this guy? This guy, does anybody know? His name is Steven Spielberg. He is a famous playwright. Screenwriter. So he is worth about $9 billion. Not that money defines who you are, but that just shows a reflection of his success as writing films. He's written so many films. He's directed so many and produced so many beautiful films that we watch in the United States. He was rejected when he was trying to study in the university at the University of Southern California. He was rejected in the cinematic arts, but he just kept on and on. He persevered, and now he's become one of the, if not the most famous filmmaker that we have. There's somebody else in the United States that you may or may not recognize because he's a little bit older now, but his name is Michael Jordan. He was, he's one of the most famous, he is probably the most famous basketball player that we've had in our NBA, National Basketball Association. He was cut from his high school basketball team, yet he got 6 championships, 5 most valuable players. He was the best player of all time. He's he's just kind of the face of basketball, which is a very famous sport here in the United States. And so again, just because he got cut in high school and the people who were around him did not recognize his skill, he persevered and he became very good. Here's somebody else, again, a person who's not alive anymore. Anybody know who that is? His name is Walt Disney. Have you ever heard of any of the Disney films? He was told by a newspaper editor that he lacked imagination. Of all people, there are more books and films and TV channels and movies and icons, cartoons, and written under his name. But they said, yeah, he doesn't have any imagination. He has no good ideas. Can you imagine if he listened to that? He persevered and became a cultural icon. We have theme parks around the world under the name Disney. Here's somebody else I'm sure you might recognize. He's been long gone. His name is Thomas Edison. And his teachers told him that he was too stupid to learn anything. But yet he's the one that created the phonograph, the light lamp. He had 1,000 patents. That was a big deal. But I think people sometimes don't recognize, or we don't recognize the ingenious that you have in yourself, because each one of us is different, and each one of y'all are going to have your own skill. So amazing. Here's 3 more people. This is a person you may or may not recognize. Probably, I'm not sure. I mean, she's been famous in the United States. Her name is Oprah Winfrey. She's a billionaire with her own channel, but she was fired from her first job as a TV anchor. So again, maybe somebody didn't recognize her genius, but she was able to persevere and become a very influential person. Recognize this guy? This guy he's called Dr. Seuss. He's written millions, hundreds of millions of copies are sold of books worldwide. Um, all my favorite books, the things that places you can go, The Cat in the Hat, some just amazing, my favorite books. And but he was rejected by his first book was rejected by 27 publishers. And I think sometimes people just don't realize the genius in some of these individuals, and that's why I'm just trying to encourage you to persevere so that you can, when people don't recognize maybe you're a genius, you will just keep trying and trying so that eventually you will succeed. And this was the last one. This was one of our presidents, Abraham Lincoln, one of our most famous presidents. He was demoted early on. He was an officer and he was demoted to the lowest ranking during the war. He had multiple business failures. He failed at political runs multiple times, but he ended up becoming president of the United States. He's very famous. And so again, he didn't give up and he didn't listen to the failure part. He just continued to persevere. And that's what I'm asking all of us to do. My school is the name of it is called Rice, and it's really not intended for the food. It's named after William Marsh Rice, who was the founder of the university. And we have made a rice model that we follow, and it's a good model. And I wanted to share it with you because I think it's something that will be helpful to you. The rice model is responsibility, integrity, community, like building community, and excellence. And so when I want to measure something, of something that I want to start or something I want to do or something I need to, maybe something's in question and I want to defend it, I'll go back to the Rice model. And it's a good model to have when you're looking at situations, individual situations. And am I taking responsibility? Is this responsible thing to do? Is it of the highest integrity? Is integrity being considered in every way? Are we building community? Are we building connections with other people? Are we helping other people succeed? Are we succeeding in ourselves with other people? And is it an excellent thing that we're doing? Are we doing it to excellence as much as we can? And I think that really is helpful for me as I've looked at different situations that are challenging and thinking, let me measure it with that. So I just give you that as just kind of a model to follow. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of go into something that maybe you haven't thought about. Maybe have you thought about maybe ever studying abroad? A lot of students will study abroad after their standard 12 schooling, university, and they'll go to the university as a freshman. They're about 18 years old, 18 years old. And what do I need to apply? And we do a bachelor's degree after that, a 4-year degree usually. It's about 4 years. And then after that, we have many people who will apply for a graduate degree. You can apply for a master's degree. And in some cases, you can apply for a master's PhD with your bachelor's degree. And so I'm not going to go into all the details of what every university needs because, and notice I didn't put the Rice logo there because I'm going to just kind of speak a little bit more generically. There are hundreds of universities and different kinds of universities all over the world. I would love every one of you all to come to Rice. And I would love each one of you all to apply to Rice. But the reality is, the programs that we have are fantastic. The faculty is amazing. Like Dr. Talwani, who's professor emeritus. But there's many different kinds of schools, programs around the United States. But what are some things that you need to apply? I mean, sometimes people think, I would have never thought about studying abroad. And, when I studied in Costa Rica, I did not have the money. There was no way I had the money to go anywhere. And, but I really needed to study abroad so I would know what it's like to be an international student myself. So I could talk to internationals because I really loved that. I wasn't sure that that's the career I was going to go into, and I didn't know that much about it, but I know that I wanted to work with people from other countries. And so I got a scholarship that allowed me to do it. But what are things I had to learn? What is it that I need to get admitted? And generally, students are going to need standardized exams. If you're coming in as a freshman right out of high school, you would need an SAT score. Now, for example, for Rice and other universities, the SAT score is optional because of the global pandemic. A lot of people are not able to take it. So if you take it and it's useful, you can add it to your portfolio, but it's not required if people apply for fall 2021. The English test, though, is required for many schools. From India, Rice does not require a TOEFL, the test of English, of foreign language. Again, right now, many schools, because of global pandemic, people aren't able to take the exam, so they're taking other standardized exams to show their language proficiency, they're showing others, but you have to show English language proficiency. If you decide that, well, I want to do my undergraduate, say in India, but I'd love to study abroad for a graduate degree, which a lot of them do. Depending on the major, you can do at Rice, you can do a master's PhD together. So after you get your bachelor's degree or bachelor's and master's, depending on how many years your degree is, you can apply, and you would need a GRE, the graduate record exam. Right now, because of the global pandemic, they are relaxing that a little bit. So people who are taking it, they can use that in their portfolio. But if they can't take it, then they're using other things as well to look at the proficiency. They're looking at students to make sure that you will be successful. And then you have to look at your transcripts or your mark sheets to be able to to make sure that you have high enough grades. Rice is small university, private, and highly competitive. So getting in, you would need to have really strong grades. There's every university in the United States there's different admissions requirements. We don't have a centralized Ministry of Education that will standardize it. No, every university is different, and they get to decide, what their standards are. You do need financial support to show yourself that you can support yourself. If you're an undergraduate, usually undergraduate personal finances. But if you can, some people will get scholarships at Rice. We do have some scholarships for international students. And I'm going to ask if everybody could mute yourself just so that we're almost done here, and then we can ask questions. But we do have university scholarships. You have to say early on, if you're applying at the undergraduate level, that you need scholarship. A lot of our PhD students, most of them are going to get funded from Rice. So that's why we have a lot of Indian students who will do a bachelor's or a bachelor's master's in India, and then they come and do their master's PhD at Rice, and they can get funding for that. You will always probably need to do some kind of personal statement or essay. Each university, each program kind of has their own. And then you'll need letters of recommendation. So you want to think about who could write that. And then there's also extracurricular activities. We value those in the United States. So if you do, you would want to do a resume and show your extracurricular. I pretty much finished my talk because I would like to answer questions, but what I want to just okay. So if everyone can mute yourself, we'd really appreciate that. I'm open to questions, and so if you have questions, I'm having a hard time reading them from the slides, but maybe what I'll do is I'll stop sharing at this point, and maybe you can read some of the questions, and if you can help me, Dr. J, read those, that would be great.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you so much for listening.
Such a wonderful talk and summarizing the recipe of success. Like one of the things that I've heard a lot from the employers is the most important quality of success they cannot measure, and that is grit. And that is the ability to bounce back after you fail. And that is so hard to measure. So think your talk was so wonderful, and probably if students pay attention like to that in the long run, they'll definitely be successful.
Sometimes, you do need to sit back after you failed. You need to sit back. You need to reevaluate. Sometimes you need to kind of, you're frustrated or you may even shed a few tears, but then you don't do that too long, but you got to reflect, what can I learn from this? And learn from it. And like you said, then you bounce back. Happens all the time. And so I'm glad you brought that up. So true. That's persevering.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions from our audience. So I would go to the first question. The first question is from Dr. Prabhat Kumar. He's asking, the biggest hurdle for initiating any job is the inertia as manifested in the behavior of my younger brother. How to overcome inertia?
I would love to find out what the definition, because I see inertia having different definitions based on the context. Can I hear from you a little bit more?
So probably it's probably like reluctance to work hard or being in a comfort zone. So how to come out of that? Probably.
So interestingly, I mean, that's a really good question. If I'm hiring for somebody, we have people who will apply for jobs and they know the skill, and that, but if the only thing that they know is the technical skill and they don't know how to work with other people, they don't know how to share, they don't know how to help other people, or they don't have, it's kind of like what we call the intelligence, knowing how to work with a team and encourage others as you encourage yourself. But if you're just doing the technical, that's only part of the job. And because the jobs are interactive and you've got to know how to work with different kinds of people and different kinds of situations, learn how to communicate different things. Maybe in this particular case, you need to pick up the phone and call somebody. Sometimes you may need to ask if you can call for a meeting and call the right people around together. But if you just stay in the technical, the world that I just know, I know the skill, it's not helpful. You have to have perseverance. You got to have that, what I
Okay.
call the intelligence.
So there is one more question from Tanisha. She's asking, the students in India feel a lot of pressure from society and family to succeed in life academically. Is it same everywhere?
Um, I think in the United States is a lot of that, depending on the, I think there's a lot of that, depending on where you're brought up and how. Um, I think that's. I, I'm going to ask people to go ahead and mute for just a few more minutes. I think there is pressure, and I think that's a way that people can really learn on what are the things that you're really good at and what are the things you're not. And if you're not very good at something, maybe get a tutor and get somebody to help you. Recognize those things that you really fail at, and then the things that you do well, maybe you can help somebody else and you can get better. But sometimes you just need to communicate to your families too that this is my skill, this is my gift, but this other thing is not, and I either need help to get through it or whatever. But I think sometimes we put too much pressure on other people. Just because I'm good at something, I think you should be, and that's, everybody's different. We're all made differently.
So there's one generic question that I hear from most of the students, and that is whether to like take the SAT route, like go for bachelor's in India and do master's or PhD later, or finish your bachelor's in India and then go for your graduate studies in USA. So which one do you prefer is better for them?
I think it depends on the person and what you want to do. If you're someone who, um, for example, in my case, I needed a doctorate. So I went in order to work at a university with people who are getting doctorates. So I had to get it. But most of the people, none of my friends ever studied for a doctorate. They didn't even go and get their master's. So I think it depends on what you're looking at later on. I think there's some financial issues, of course. If you're going to go into an undergraduate program what is your long-term goal? Why is it more helpful for you to do that abroad than in your home country? I think it's very individual, and a lot of it just comes down to funding, and then also, do you need a doctorate? I mean, a doctorate is a long thing, a long term. Takes a long time to do it, but people, once you have that doctorate, you can be very, very successful and opening doors for other people and yourself. So most of our doctorate students are fully funded, but the undergrads are not, and it's expensive. So I think a lot of it comes down to real logistics. Can I really afford this? And wait.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So one more question that I have got is, how do we mentor, like how do student, like high school students in USA decide which way to go? Like at high school, almost all over the world, people have questioned whether to be an engineer, doctor, or whatever. So how do students in USA decide? Because the USA education system is kind of a role model. So how do we decide here?
I think that is a fantastic question because what happens is we have a very general education at the undergraduate level for a couple of years. So you're exposed to many different kinds of studies. So you may be a little bit more, say, artistically involved, or that may be more your gift or whatever your interest. But you will get science, and you're going to get math, and you're going to get everything that you're going to get exposure to all different kinds of education. In the same way, if you're someone who's more technical or more scientific or computer science or something like that, you're going to get exposure in those first years to maybe some music appreciation or some social sciences and psychology and things that you weren't. So we kind of laugh about it in the United States because we know that people apply for a particular major, but it's very likely that undergraduates will change within the first year or year and a half to another major. It's very common because they get exposed to things and they learn things that they didn't realize that it interests them and that they're good at. And so, and sometimes, students are brilliant in different ways. They may be technical and they may be musicianly inclined. And so, it gives you an opportunity, the undergraduate opportunity gives you an opportunity to really look at those things early on and then focus a little bit more later on in your upperclassmen when you're a junior and senior, your third and fourth year.
So on a similar note, I have one more question. Probably that will be the last question I will take. And the question is whether one should chase, like how do we define success? Like whether we should say like chase like a glamour or fame or like money, or what's the real definition of success? So, like most of the
I,
examples, most of
I
the
love
examples
that.
from the entertainment industry and like from sport people, but they're like millions of people who work hard. They're like equally, I think, famous or accomplished, but we don't know them.
I love that question. First of all, I think that question is brilliant, because success is individual for each person. Each person has their own success, right? So for me, working with international students, that may not be the thing that everybody thought was just the greatest thing, because they have gifts in other or interests in other things. And so for me, I feel successful in the fact every day if I can talk to a student and help a student go through a problem and work through a problem and make their life better, or just the fact that I've been able to work with international students and being at Rice has been such, for me a success. Other people, fame is overrated, and I think because things are all on internet and you can see people, it's overrated. Success is within your heart, what you feel is right, and where your values are and what you truly value, and in your heart, that you things that you really want to do. So no, success is individual. It doesn't have to do, it's not monetary, it's not fame. It's you're doing what your best gift is, because you've all been blessed with gifts.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. I think that was wonderful. I'm really blessed to have known you and being mentored by you for like almost 13 years now, and and you are a role model for most of the graduate students or like and undergraduate students at Rice University. So I hope,
Oh, thank you.
yeah. So we wish
Thank you.
all the best for your career and future. And I hope you remain attached to us and keep guiding us from time to time. It will be wonderful.
I'm so grateful to connect with you in this way, and thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you all. I wish I was sitting in front of you all in person. I could see your amazing faces and learn from each one of you all. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. So next, we invite Dr. Manik Talwani or Professor Manik Talwani for a talk. So to introduce Dr. Talwani, um, it's very difficult to introduce Dr. Talwani because he's already so famous, and I had very hard time finding words to describe him. But here is a brief summary. Yeah, I have tried my best to summarize his work and achievement in a paragraph. So Professor Manik Talwani is currently a professor emeritus at Rice University. Professor Manik Talwani needs no introduction among the geophysics community. Dr. Talwani is one of the pioneers of modern applied geophysics, and he is an internationally recognized geophysicist who has carried out research in seismology as well as gravity and magnetics. Dr. Talwani got his bachelor's and master's from Delhi University and his PhD in geophysics in 1959 from Columbia University. During his long career spanning almost 60 years, Dr. Talwani served as the director of Lamont Doherty Geological Observatory from 1974 until 1981. After he left Lamont to join Gulf Oil as the first as a director of the Center for Marine Crustal Studies and later as a chief scientist. In 1985, Dr. Talwani was appointed as a Schlumberger Chair in Advanced Studies and Research, and he served simultaneously as the director of Geotechnology Research Institute of Houston. Advanced Research Center, Houston Advanced Research Center. Dr. Talwani also served as the president and CEO of the Integrated Ocean Drilling Program Management International in Washington, D.C. from 2004 to 2009. Dr. Talwani has served on numerous national and international committees and has authored or co-authored more than 150 peer-reviewed articles and 7 books. Dr. Talwani has received an amazing list of awards, including James B. McElwain Award and the Maurice Ewing Medal from the American Geophysical Union, the Alfred Wegener Medal from the European Union of Geoscience, the Emil Weichert Award from the German Geophysical Society, the George P. Woolard Award from Geological Society of America, and the Krishnan Medal from the Indian Geophysical Union. And the list goes on, but now I will let Dr. Talwani speak and guide you guys in this event.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
You can. I'm not muted anymore, am I?
No, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Firstly, let me thank Dr. Mishra for the invitation to talk and to this very talented group of young men and women. Let me also thank him for the excellent introduction that he gave. I'm very flattered. I also must say that I totally agree with what Dr. Baker said today. Perseverance is indeed very important. And I think she gave an excellent introduction to what foreign students need to know before they start thinking about coming to the United States. Now, somebody mentioned the word success, and I would say the keys to success are no mystery, and you know what they are. I'm sure you're being told all the time, work hard, do your homework, listen to your parents, etc., etc. No, I'm not going to give you a lecture on how you can become rich and famous and millionaire software engineers. I'm not even going to tell you to necessarily follow me in my profession. Although after hearing what I have to talk about, you may want to do that. I'm going to do something else. In life, one comes across difficulties and challenges. I'm not going to talk about various challenges. I am going to talk about various challenges that I met in my life. Now, the challenges that I faced are going to be very different from the challenges that you're going to face. But at least by reciting my challenges, it might give you an example of how you may have to face yours to accomplish your goals. Also keep in mind that overcoming challenges and with perseverance, as Dr. Baker suggested, has its rewards. So let me start with one hot summer day in New Delhi. I had finished my Master of Science degree in physics, and I wanted to continue studying not in physics, but in geophysics. Geophysics, or earth science is another word, deals with the application of physics to solving the geological mysteries within the earth. However, at that time, there was no university in India where I could study geophysics. Suddenly, out of the blue, I received a message from the Ministry of Education in India that a scholarship was available to study in Norway. But isn't it very cold in Norway? Who wants to go there? I thought. Now that was a challenge. Although anything could be better than the scorching summer heat of New Delhi. So I agreed. I bought a book to study the Norwegian language, and I was interviewed by an officer in the Norwegian embassy in Delhi. He was a very nice person and gave me several hints on how things were in Norway. His name was Knut Myhre. Please remember that name because we are going to run into him many years later. It took some time to arrange matters, but in November that year, I found myself in the city of Oslo, which is the capital of Norway. It turned out that Norway also did not have any instruction for geophysics at any university. They did have a government institute which did prospecting for ore, looking for iron ore and copper ore and so on. Well, I thought I would join that institute anyway and learn some geophysics. I arrived in Norway and I was immediately faced with three challenges. I had to learn to speak Norwegian. The fellow students at the student hostel where I lived all insisted that I learn to speak Norwegian. The second challenge was I had to learn how to ski. Ski is those flat wooden things that you stand on to go around in the snow. Everybody in Norway skied, so I had to learn to do that too. By the way, learning to ski was useful. Many years later, I came to Norway for a skiing holiday with my wife and children. It was very nice that I had learned to ski earlier. The third challenge was more immediate. I had to go to my place of work in a bus and then walk 1 mile. It was November in Norway, and Norway is so far north that you have only 2 hours of daylight. So when you went to work, it was dark, and when you came home, it was dark. That was okay, except that I found that often the road that I was supposed to walk on was covered with a sheet of ice, and with my leather-soled shoes, it was a challenge. But I went to work anyway. 2 months later, the sun came out during the day and the ice melted away. I spent only 8 months in Norway, but as I look back, those 8 months were some of the most important 8 months in my life. I finally had to leave Norway and go to the United States, enroll in a university, and really study postgraduate geophysics. I left for the United States and enrolled in Columbia University in a postgraduate program in geophysics. I found an important difference in geophysics in Norway and at Columbia. While my work in Norway was all on land, my research at Columbia as a student, as a researcher, and as a professor was all at sea. In order to do research at sea, you need to be on a ship. And I worked on several kinds of ships. These included a fishing boat, a submarine, various research ships, a drill ship, and finally several industry ships. Each ship presented its own challenge. On the fishing boat, the work was quite simple. We had an instrument that had to be lowered to the sea bottom with a winch. The instrument was in a heavy case, but it just took a few minutes to bring the case down, then wait for 10 minutes while a reading was taken, and then bring the instrument up. We did that for a number of stations. While we were between stations, we did some fishing. We caught a lot of fish, cooked the fish right away, and it was indeed very delicious. So all in all, not a big challenge. Next, I would like to talk about my research about aboard a submarine. The first question is, why do you have to go on a submarine to do your research? The answer is that some instruments do not work well when the ship is rolling and pitching and the waves with the waves, and you have to find a steady platform. A submarine can dive down a few hundred feet. It's calm down there, and you can use your instruments and make your measurements. The submarine that I was going to go on was not a fancy new nuclear submarine, but an old, leaky World War II British submarine. I joined the submarine in Freetown, which is port of the country called Sierra Leone in West Africa. And I was supposed to travel with the submarine for 4 months with some brief port stops at Cape Town and Durban in South Africa, Mogadishu in Somalia, and finally leave the submarine in Karachi. After we were out at sea, the way my equipment was supposed to work was I would ask the captain of the submarine that I would like to make a station at a certain spot. The submarine, if the captain agreed, would stop there and dive down to some pre-arranged depths. And I would take readings, which would take about 20 minutes. I asked the captain how deep could the submarine go, and he said 500 feet. I said, okay. So when we came to the stop to make a station, I said to the captain, let's go down to 500 feet, because I knew the deeper we go, the calmer it would be. So we started with the experiment, and after about 10 minutes, a sailor came down to me and said, hey, we have to go up. The blooming submarine is leaking. I ignored him and went on with my work. Then the first officer came along and he says, old boy, we have to go up. I said, well, after I finish my reading, it takes a few more minutes. And then the captain shows up and said, oh no, I give you 1 minute to secure the equipment and we're going up. And the deck of the submarine was awash under 6 inches of water. After that, I said to the captain, I won't go down to 500 feet, 300 feet is good enough. We stopped at the port of Cape Town and then at the port of Durban, also in South Africa. Some of you might know that Mahatma Gandhi started his protest movement in Durban, and there was still a big Indian community there. Learning that an Indian scientist is on board the submarine, they invited me to come and have tea and samosas with them, which was very nice, especially after the not so tasty British food for 3 months. The next stop was in Mogadishu in Somalia, and I think they were having a revolution there or something, and we did not spend much time there. I was taking reading all the way at stations, dropping down to 300 feet, and finally we stopped in Karachi, where I took the equipment off. I thought I would go to see my parents in India before I went back to the United States. So I got ready to buy a ticket to India, and I was told that you need an exit visa to leave the country. You get an entrance visa when you enter the country and an exit visa when you leave the country. I said, I don't have an entrance visa because I came here on a submarine. And now how do I get an exit visa? They said, you seem to be a spy for India. and you have to go and talk to our big officer. So I had to go and visit the office of the big officer, and he asked me a few questions, and then he said, "Do you know anything about Pakistan?" I said, "Oh, I've spent 1 year in a high school in Lahore, and I have an uncle who ran a newspaper there. And what's his name?" I was asked, and I said, "Oh, his name is Virendra." "Oh, I know. That is a very good family. You cannot be a spy being in such a good family." Now, that's the way things go in India and Pakistan. He called the servant and said, "Bring some tea for the Sahib." So I thought I got away very easily. But most of my research work was not carried on fishing boats or submarines, but on research vessels, mainly on a research vessel belonging to Columbia University. This research vessel stayed out at sea for as long as 25 or 26 days, and then there would be 3 or 4 days in port. Working on a research ship presents a number of challenges. One challenge is simply the month of isolation from the rest of the world at a time that there was no internet for communication and no GPS for positioning. You use the old-fashioned wireless for communication and located your position by using a telescope-like instrument called the sextant to look at the stars. By finding the angle to the star, you could locate your position, except when the sky was overcast and you could not see the stars. You could be lost for several days. That was quite a challenge. Another challenge is that when the sea is rough, the ship can roll and pitch quite a bit, and it's not very pleasant to be on board. A lot of people get seasick. Luckily, I didn't get very seasick. But if you ran into some very rough seas or even a hurricane, that could be quite unpleasant. One of the most dangerous experiments we had to do at sea involved working with an explosive called dynamite, which works like a bomb, but it does not explode by itself. You have to attach a fuse wire to it and light the fuse at one end. This is called making a charge. When the flame reaches the dynamite, which takes about 20 seconds, it explodes. So you make the charge in the lab, walk over to the deck, and throw the charge into the sea, and then it goes off. You have to do all this within 20 seconds. Otherwise, the dynamite will explode on the ship itself and sink it, which is not very pleasant, of course. So you have to be very, very careful. Now, this experiment was done on a routine basis every 3 minutes, and we did this day and night without stopping from almost the time the ship left the port and the ship arrived at the next port 25 days later. This was the biggest challenge on our ship. Another challenge was very interesting. We were up north in the Greenland Sea, only about 800 miles from the North Pole. It was very, very cold. We were surrounded by icebergs, and we really had to make our way through these icebergs. It was quite interesting to be so far north. On the other hand, it was very cold and dangerous to be surrounded by icebergs. An interesting thing happened. We got an invitation from the governor of a small island way up north. This island called Svalbard is the most northern habitable place in the world. As I remember, it was the month of August, but everywhere there was snow and ice and cold, of course. The governor invited the whole ship's crew and the scientists to a big feast. And that's one of the rewards of taking on the challenge of being so far north. Finally, let me say something about being on a drill ship. The drilling rig is lowered down to the bottom of the ocean, and it brings back samples of mud and rock. This is a big ship, and it doesn't roll and pitch. So life is quite comfortable, and the food that they give you is also very nice. So you would ask, what kind of challenge did you have on this sort of a fancy ship? Well, it turns out that my co-chief scientist, they generally have two scientists on the ship, was a Russian scientist. He was a good friend. And the two of us had to jointly decide where to drill. But he had to report to the Russian Academy of Sciences, and he had to follow the party line. I did not have any great party line to follow. I just wanted to do research. And so we had a number of arguments for every drill site, but we remained good friends. So there are some of the challenges in my career, and I don't expect you to have these particular challenges, but as Dr. Baker also said, you need to persevere. But whatever profession you choose, scientist or lawyer or doctor or software expert, you will always have some challenges, often with some rewards that come from facing these challenges. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned the name Knut Møre, the Norwegian embassy officer I met in Delhi in 1953. I met him in 1981 when I was in Oslo, Norway, to get an honorary doctorate award from Oslo University, presented to me by the King of Norway. Mr. Møre was at that time the Norwegian ambassador to Denmark. He remembered me after 28 years and invited me to lunch in Oslo to celebrate the occasion. So that was quite pleasant. I think I'll stop here. I've said enough about what I've done at sea and what are the kind of challenges I had to face and how I try to face them. Thank you all very much. I'll take some questions.
It's such a wonderful journey you had. Like, I have known you for so long, but it's the first time I'm hearing this story about you. It's like all the listeners, it's like one fun part about being in the core sector. Like you get to be in the field and do real science. So like our questions, like most of the questions from you, Dr. Talwani, will be like related to like technology, like modern technology versus like the core sector. So one of the first question that I want to ask you, how easy it is to pursue a passion in science and research when financially it is becoming less and less lucrative day by day?
Well, I think there are differences in India and in the United States. I think in the United States, you have the luxury that in almost any profession, if you do well, you can earn well. You choose to do science because it's interesting and important and not to earn a lot of money. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, especially for us, a student who is like 25 years old, or if he has just graduated from a university with a bachelor's degree, if he has an option to go do some research where he's not get enough, versus the option to go into the tech sector and earn a lot of money. So how should one decide so even if like one has passion for science and research, it's most of the time it's a very difficult decision for a student who is not very financially secure and he has the pressure to earn money and livelihood, but he wants to do like research and follow his passion, but most of them kind of they have to sacrifice the passion over a demand for a better career and security in life.
That's a very good question, and often there's students at Rice in our department have this question. I like research. I like to go, and but I have to teach at a university or something of that sort, and I don't make a whole lot of money. But I'm in Houston, and there are a lot of oil companies that offer big jobs. They are not research and they're not intellectually often as challenging, but I get more money. And I have a wife and children, and my wife thinks it's not a bad idea to make a little money now that you've spent so much time. So it's a personal decision. And I think I encourage people that if you are inclined towards research and you're not doing research just to make money, stay with that. If, on the other hand, research is just another way to have a profession, and there's nothing wrong with that, then you go ahead and find and work for industry or open a business for yourself. So I think it's a personal challenge, and it depends on your inclination. And also, if you consult your wife, that's very important.
Yep. Thank you. And one more question is that, what's the so in the modern world we have a kind of explosion of technology, especially related to IT. So at some point we have to find a balance between software driven sector versus the core sector. So if suppose a student qualifies IIT JEE, then he has the option to study computer science, and he gets the option to go in a core sector. And most of the time, given not so bright scenario for the core sector, most of them, they prefer to go and study computer science and feel that will get into the tech sector. So they need some kind of motivation and vision into the future of core sector. How good is it going to be in future? If they decide to be a geophysicist or a mining engineer or a civil engineer, security wise and financially, is it a good choice for them?
Well, I think if I understand your question, doing IT work and software is very popular in India, and I think it's quite lucrative. On the other hand, being a scientist and being an engineer, I think intellectually challenging and rewarding. And India has a lot of problems that can have to be solved with science. For example, water. We have a shortage of water in many parts of India, and on the other hand, a lot of water goes and flows out in the two major rivers and goes out to sea. So there has to be some way to save that water or find ways where you can have better ways of exploring for groundwater. And so finding enough water is a big challenge. Again, India used to be a big problem that it did not have much hydrocarbons, but the world is shifting now to renewables. And India has as good an opportunity as anybody else to become a leader in renewable work. And that could be also in the future quite challenging and quite lucrative. So again, it's the choices that you have to make.
And Dr. Talwan, so over the last 50, 60 years, you have seen how our this industry has evolved. So what difference you see in the world that was 50 years ago, when the world was driven by different needs and interests, versus now, where we are more technology driven and it is evolving so fast? So how a modern young professional should cope up with this just rapid change? Can you get some insight from the past?
The short answer is you have to go with the change, otherwise you get left behind. If you want to stay in technology, you have to, and as you're right, it changes very fast, but you cannot go back and go back to your old-fashioned way of doing things, you have no choice. And I think, especially in India, the way to progress is through technology, and the eradication of poverty is going to be through technology. So that's very important. And you have good IITs, good schools, and so on, and there's no reason that you can pursue the latest things in technology and stay with them.
One of the question is from our audience. He asked, in India, even after PhD, students opt for career in banks because bureaucracy and other walks, because a research career is at stake, as based on research projects, there are no jobs. So basically they have to go with the job that can earn their money. So there's a problem that we don't have much job in research related field, or after PhD, like students are not able to secure job for themselves. So is there any possible solution for near future?
Well, in India, most of the research is done by government institutions. And much more research needs to be done at university, even in smaller university. Rice is an excellent example. It's a very small university, but it is the faculty here in all departments are the leaders in research. And so the trick is, how do you fund the university? There's some state universities that can get money from the states, and there's some private universities that have endowments. In India, I think the way to progress is to not just have the government do anything, or the government can fund in various provinces. They can fund and encourage some research. I know Banaras University does some research, but by and large, the fanciest research is left to government institutions. I think if there was some way of providing more money to the provincial universities and so on, and bring research within the province of, within the possibility of many more people, I think that would be very useful.
Okay, I think we had enough questions. Like on the final note, like I would like to ask you to have a few word of advice to school students, especially from grade 6 to 12, how they should study to get like selected in a good college, and how they can get a good score, and what qualities it takes to excel in academia.
That's a hard one. I have 8 grandchildren, and my youngest 2, one of them just likes to study, and she's very, very smart, and so on. And her brother is also quite smart, but he doesn't like to study as much. And but he's very good at other things. He's very good at public speaking and so on. So I think something that Dr. Baker also suggested, that you have to exploit your own tendencies and your own talents. And I think that's a way to encourage people, not to have them all follow the same line, but expand out and try various things as it suits your particular talents.
Thank you. I think that was like very wonderful talking to you, and thank you for such like nice words and words of advice to students. I hope they have benefited a lot from this conference, and hope so we have a continuation of this event tomorrow. We have 2 hours long event tomorrow also. So hope all of you can join us tomorrow. And we have like some professionals from like technology sector and some course sectors. They will be there to guide students with more questions if you have more questions. So thanks a lot to our speakers today. And we hope to see you tomorrow.